Hello there.
Hello there.
This is a surprise comic book review that I initially wanted to do this next year. But all things concerning, that is May the 4th, and I'm going through Jedi Survivor, which, by the way, check out my walkthrough of the Jedi Survivor, as well as the predecessor, Jedi Fallen Order, on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl. Last year and the year before, matter of fact, I started like a year before, leading into last year, getting ready for the Kenobi series on Disney Plus. I reviewed all the um Star Wars movies, and up to the point of the Kenobi series, well, up to the point of Bad Batch season 2. I reviewed like all the TV shows up to the point of Bad Batch season 2, which you can all see on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl, to hear my thoughts on all things Star Wars that I've amassed uh throughout my time on this channel. And all the like likes and dislikes on every little thing that, not every little thing that's Star Wars, but the bulk of it. Currently right now, Star Wars Vision season 2 is up on the channel, which I checked out, and I never reviewed season 1, nor plan on doing anything with season 2, because they're like same thing with Tales of the Jedi, as a matter of fact, because they're like uh roughly 15 to 18 minutes each episode, which the bulk of them are really good. I can't wait for Tales of the Jedi season 2 to come out, because season 1, the only good part, I mean, like, they're all good parts, but it's just that there was like 6 episodes, half of which was dedicated to Ahsoka and the other half for Count Dooku. Now, they all are good in their own rights, but I think we all agreed that the Count Dooku stuff was more engaging, because we never really spent time outside maybe Clone Wars to in certain parts, in the especially in the prequels, and how he felt about his Padawan Qui-Gon Jinn dying at the hands of Darth Maul, and his descent into the into the dark side, and how that was complete, and what's going on with Yaddle and everything like that. But there's only maybe like, I think the two of the Ahsoka stuff was good, because you get to learn that Ahsoka, when she became Anakin's Padawan, is to try to keep him out of reckless risk. But because of his training, because he wasn't teaching her how to fight, he was teaching her how to survive, and that's what she did, and that's why she is so good as she is, because she was trained by one of the greatest Jedi in history. I did also a YouTube tier list that of each of the Star Wars well, not all his TV shows, but the bulk of the TV shows and movies, which you can find on my YouTube channel as well. But I will return to that tier list after the Ahsoka series finishes. I want to return to that YouTube tier list, because I gotta include like Star Wars Visions and Bad Batch season 2, Tales of the Jedi, and to add to the list. Because just like with like the DC universe movies and the MCU, after each phase I will return to my tier list of those and add to the spots, and give my overall engage the quality, in my personal opinion. So anyway, like and subscribe. Also, If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel because I am like 16 subscribers away from meeting my 400 subscriber goal. Once we reach that milestone, once again, I said plenty of times in a lot of videos, but in case you haven't, heard, if we get to that point, I will be doing a Hot Ones challenge video where I will actually try out each of the hot sauces from the Hot Ones show on some wings, and I will gather at least 10 questions, whether it's via like Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and I'll choose 10 of the best ones and answer your questions live. I haven't decided whether it's going to be directly on Twitch or YouTube. I might just do it directly on Twitch and try it out and answer each of your questions, give you guys a shout out as like a celebration. I haven't done like a milestone thing since my 100 subscriber goal a couple of years back with the one chip challenge, which you can check out on that out on my YouTube channel as well. Anyway, it's May the 4th, and I've been telling people the past couple of days that I will be doing like a surprise review for Star Wars Celebration, but I kept that very close to the chest. But I wanted to review this is ever since Marvel acquired Disney acquired Star Wars, Marvel Comics have been putting out a good handful of Star Wars stories. I haven't read everything. It's just been like this and this Vader series. I should check out stuff for like Luke and Han and see what's up with that. I don't know why I never even like check those out. I should. But yeah, I also need a reason to bust out my saber. Got this, in case you wonder how I got this, what's that crap, what is that boxing? A friend of mine told me about it last year when I got this. Crap, what is it? It's like those mystery loot boxes for and they sent me a lot of stuff. I'm trying to go through like because you sent a lot of like things on Instagram. I'm trying to go, can't go too far back. It's probably gonna take a while. So never mind. I got this from some kind of a particular loot box where each piece is assembled by different people and and strung together. Sometimes you have to put it together yourself from cord to hem. But once you get it in the mail, you never know what you're gonna get because this is a total surprise. This is like one of the a rare orange glow, orange kyber crystal, which you don't see all too often. But when I replay Jedi Fallen Order, I actually got like the orange color glow, and I was so excited because it matches my actual saber. So it was weird because I was kind of hoping I would get the Kylo Ren look. I don't know why, but that's just dope looking. But I at least got the cross blade saber on Jedi Survivor, which once again you can check out my walkthrough of that on my YouTube channel as well, and Twitch. You want to join me live when I'm playing Jedi Survivor or any other game that I got coming up. Anyway, Star Wars Obi Wan. This is probably what a lot of people kind of hoped, at least somewhat hoped that the Kenobi series should have been. Because if you watch my spoiler review on the Kenobi series, I still gave it some glowing recommendations personally. Not many people really care for that and with understandable reasons. But the reason I like it is because it's like it's more so Hayden Christensen's Vader, because they only got like a some of that in episode 3, which I mentioned in my review on that movie. This is what, like, I think because George Lucas failed on these actors' part because he wasn't given like good direction. So Hayden Christensen is a great actor, but a lot of people really was down on him the whole time. They give him a lot of crap because he seems like, oh, he's whiny and he's doing all this, stuff that people like thought it was just kind of like annoying, or just like like the weird brassness. I can't remember everything they complained about back in a day, but it's roughly around that stuff. There's certain plot holes in the prequels, but if you like really like focus and pay attention, especially towards getting into, because I think Clone Wars series helped a lot, which I reviewed those as well. You see, like, combined with the Clone Wars, you see Anakin's descent little by little, because as Luke mentioned in The Last Jedi, at the height of their power, they gotten, resting on their laurels, gotten, like full of themselves. They lost their connection to the, I don't want to say lost connection to the Force, but their ability to see through the Force has been diminished. So because of that, they couldn't easily see Palpatine, a Sith Lord, in their midst, like Zemo did with the Avengers, kill them from the inside out and use one of their best warriors to do it. And the Kenobi series should have been like just Obi Wan going through essentially PTSD. Instead, it's just more so, even though I'm glad we get to see a young Leia, we never see a very young Leia, but that should have been dedicated to like maybe 1 or 2 of the episodes. We spent too much time with her trying to get her back, and this kind of angsty imperial forgot we call those Sith Jedi that is trained under Darth Vader, but you know what I mean. She is very try hard. I'm not going to talk about the actress, because I think like the actress got like dealing, just like with like the actors with Rose, these so-called Jedi fans, like Ewan McGregor said, not really fans in his eyes, that choose to say a bunch of like racist, idiotic stuff towards his actress, which is wrong. You should never do. Don't do that to any of these actors who's trying to be involved in these live action Star Wars stuff, and you crap on them because they don't like fit some kind of narrative in your mind's eye. Same thing with John Boyega as Finn. He got a lot of crap. It was like, oh my god, black stormtrooper. So like, never do that. But despite all that, I would have been just great that I was in like you'll be set for life if you get cast in a Star Wars anything. Like Pedro Pascal mentioned in like at a Comic-Con, it's like, how like he was so proud, like, he watched Star Wars as a kid and he's telling his family and everything like that. Like, I got into Star Wars as a kid because of my father, and I watched the original trilogy as a little kid, and I was sucked in. It was one of my favorite franchises in pop culture to this day. And honestly, personally, I think this is probably a more, realistic future of us in distant future. Because some people say like, oh, we should have like a future with like more like Star Trek. Hope for that. Yeah, that's too neat and pristine. Given like, I don't say humanity suck or anything like that, but we tend to have our grievances, and not saying we will be in constant wars like Star Wars, but it's not gonna be so neat and pristine the way Star Trek is. You see all the clean cut suits and the dashboards all like smooth and beep bop boops, all that stuff. It's like, I'm saying like Star Wars is gritty, but it seems more down to earth in a way. Anyway, we shouldn't be concentrating like so much of the time with this edgy Sith and angsty 7-year-old Leia so much of the time, at the very least, because the bulk of the story should have been about just Obi Wan going through PTSD. Because as I mentioned in my review on the Kenobi series, he is kind of like the way like Native Americans was treated, where like nearly all of their people was wiped out, most because of like the Spaniards and Europeans, like diseases they brought over from their countries to the New World. But by and large, they're like almost systematically eradicated. And like anybody who's been in like those kind of like marginalized communities and know their particular history on colonization and everything like that will understand a Jedi's point of view when they lived through something like a Jedi purge, where their their numbers ranked into like well over somewhere between, maybe like a spitballing here, like somewhere between 1 to 2,000 maybe, to darn near like, let's say that there was like down to like probably like 5 to 10%, and they have to slowly pick themselves back up over time, because like there's always going to be force sensitive children out in the galaxy. As you see at the end of Jedi Fallen Order, there's still force sensitive children in the world, but they just need experienced good Jedi out there to find them and nurture and cultivate them, so their people can flourish once again. But this time under the, well, I said what I said about Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, which you can check out on my channel, but Luke Skywalker under the tutelage with at least her and him and Ahsoka, and I say Star Killer because I need to bring Star Killer back into the Jedi canon. And you got Seer Junda and Cal Kestis from the Fallen Order games. You got some good experienced Jedi out there in the galaxy that can find wherever younglings, teach them the ways of the Force, and like I said, bring back the Jedi under a proper, less arrogant form of the Jedi Order, like a New Age order. This is, this series was written by Christopher Cantwell, and through this 5 issues, it have different artists here and there. It's kind of like with Star Wars Visions, you got like different types of art, and except when you're during the present day, you have roughly similar kind of design with like kind of like very pencil type of look, which I thought was very, very good, especially given the sandy kind of landscape. You kind of want some kind of grady kind of art, and this is a more older this is the one that we met in New Hope, like this kind of Obi Wan, who's been just watching Luke from afar. This is gonna be fairly close to the stage in New Hope, like approaching to that movie. I say it's probably maybe running almost parallel to Rogue One right now. I'm just assuming that, but given the fact that, you know, given his age, and you know, this has been around time when Luke will be approaching that moment when he want to get off this rock. And nice little catch with the twin sons on Tatooine. Very, you know, nice touch. So he's just reminiscing at this point, because, you know, when you get, I guess when you get to the certain age, you start reminiscing about, like, you know, certain regrets in life, and, you know, all things that could have been done differently, and him definitely going over, you know, each stage of his life up to his current point, which I think, like I said, the Kenobi series probably should have done at least somewhat, but also him trying to reconnect with the Force and try to find a way to overcome his trauma, because he went through a severe trauma. His people were nearly annihilated, with only like at least 5 to 10% actually surviving. And they all pretty much, that 5 to 10% are scattered to the winds. And he and Yoda all, like, just like, you know, him on Dagobah and him on Tatooine, both gonna be, you know, training Luke in the ways of the Force in their own way. But as good of mentors as they are, they're like the quintessential mentors you hear, you know, you read about from the hero's journey, which I covered in a discussion video about the female's hero's journey in my discussion video back in March during Women's History Month, and how well it can be applied to them. And part of the hero's journey is meeting the mentor, and of course the mentor don't stick around. That's typically how it's done, and the mentor doesn't really tend to stick around. They do end up dying, not finishing the teaching to the hero of the story, but teaching them just enough to where they now have to be on their own and figure things out. You know, not sink or swim, but grow into the hero on their own without having their hands being held the whole entire time. They just need like that foundation, and they take it from there. As the sandstorm is coming over Tatooine, because you get a little bit, I mean, unless you're like a really deep cut Jedi, you have like a deep cut Jedi, Star Wars knowledge like that, it's fun to know that Tatooine, they have more frequent, I won't say frequent, but occasional sandstorms. But he remembers only one time it rained on Tatooine, and it was 4 days after he came here to watch over Luke while he's in seclusion, and it hasn't rained since. And here he's like probably in his 70s, or at least approaching 70s maybe. So as he is batting down the hatches to weigh out the sandstorm, he's writing a journal, which, like I said, this should have been going through this 5 issues, like it should have been something like what the show should have been adapting in a way. Of course, this I think came a little bit after, or running parallel with the Kenobi series, so that wouldn't make sense. But I don't know, this 5-issue run is part of the Kenobi series. I think a lot of people would have been looking forward to, but I like what we have regardless, because I didn't even finish this point. To me, it was a matter to show the capabilities of why Hayden Christensen was the right choice for Vader. He embodied Vader, and it's cool to see him actually play that in the full dark armor and everything, and just like coming out like a slasher horror monster. because he was like a serious like threat to the point where most of the season was Kenobi just frightened beyond belief that was people has turned into, and and just regretting the mistakes and stuff that he probably should have seen, or at least all the high council should have seen, but was blinded. It's just like, and him hallucinating, and just all this stuff coming to grips with what things he's done and probably should have done, and probably been like a better mentor to Anakin, because they're following like so very dogmatic ways. Yoda acknowledges his failure as well, but as he says in Last Jedi, failure is almost always the better teacher. So Obi Wan remembers his time as a youngling, which is like, I don't think we ever really speak on that point in Obi Wan's life, but he remembers this fellow youngling named Garan, who has been having these nightmares about her father, and it seems like he's in trouble. And even though Jedi's are their old dogmatic ways, has to sever ties to like be able to stay in the present, and that kind of stuff. Hate leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. But even though Yoda, she went to Yoda and he's not offering any kind of true help or guidance, that she, I was watching Similar Therapy on Luke Skywalker, and they point out with older Luke, who kind of faltered a bit when he sensed like a darkness in Ben, even though it was being influenced by Snoke. He, at a split second of weakness, contemplating on murdering his own nephew because he wanted to prevent another Vader rising. But instead of like coming to Ben with compassion and try to circumvent that through a positive way, Ben, unfortunately with bad timing, sees Luke about to kill him, and he end up destroying the Luke's temple and everything like that. So they compared it to when Luke kind of in Return of the Jedi, lost his temper when Vader, says like, "Oh, I will go after your sister then," and then attacking him with rage, but only stopping short, because he's not going to fall that way. So they point out that we're still human. We tend to falter here and there. We tend to backslide into certain stuff that we learn to overcome, but we do less of that as we get older, but we still do it. And we see, reading through this again, Obi-Wan mentions in a particular panel how like he falter a bit himself, but the fact that he like, because he's a little bit more experienced, he learns that like, failure can be a great teacher. Doesn't mean we will stop failing when we get older. We just have to acknowledge that mistake and try to like quickly remedy that, and not let despair overtake you. Anyway, young Obi-Wan tried to convince his friend, who been helping him through his youngling training, because she's very good, apparently very good in her own right, and probably would have been a great Jedi in her older years. Tried to convince her to stay because he didn't want to be alone. But she tells him like, you'll be fine without me, but I have to do this. And this is when they're on Coruscant. So she just jumps off and lands into the lower levels, the underbelly of Coruscant. And Obi-Wan decides to follow soon after. That's when he gets jumped by these thugs who, because he has a bit of force training, he's managed to like hold a few of them back, but it still wasn't enough. But thanks to Garen showing up, they all stop when the leader of this pack shows up. And apparently Garen was making a deal, trading her silver necklace that her family gave her, which she should have not kept, because, you know, Obi-Wan points out we had to avoid these attachments. But like she says, like, well, I'm getting rid of it now, so what's the point? So she traded that in order to have her, you know, give her a lift to the plan to go find her father. But then they quickly get betrayed, because once they show they are force sensitive, you know, they decide, okay, well, you know, this will be like a nice hefty price for us for force sensitive children to aim the highest bidders. But they managed to break out of their shackles. You know, they should have known better. You know, these kids probably would be able to at least snap out cuffs. So they managed to escape those captors, but Garen still wants to find her father, and she bids Obi-Wan farewell as Obi-Wan went back to the temple, and Yoda is there, and he mentions that his friend is gone. And Yoda is understanding, but given the fact he still broke curfew, it's like, well, you have to sweep here and contemplate on things, you know, about gave him, you know, some lesson, and he's like, you contemplate on that while you sweep in this hallway. Your older Obi-Wan points out, well, he never saw Garen after that. He only hopes that she found her father and managed to help him in some manner. It'd be great, you know, for like because people been, you know, talking about like, oh, we got to get out of the Star Wars, you know, Skywalker shadow and blah blah blah. Well, you can explore what's going on with this Garen person and find like an older Garen in the current, well, I would say current state of the Jedi Star Wars franchise. But I guess you can put it somewhere around the Mandalorian time frame, to where she's still like, you know, still learn the ways of the Force by some means, even though she never really finished her proper training. But I imagine she probably would have like escaped the whole Order 66 situation, because given the fact that how the time period worked, this is way beyond before Palpatine became a senator. Now Obi-Wan then started reminiscing about, you know, the dangers of the darkness and the abyss, and, you know, staring into that abyss, he remembers Darth Maul and how he just got so overcome. You know, the biggest adversary that Obi-Wan ever had to deal with. It was pretty much, you know, Obi-Wan's Lex Luthor, essentially. And the constant, you know, I won't say constant, but every so often, because Darth Maul suffered his greatest defeat by Obi-Wan and constantly wanted to find this guy and just take him out. Of course, this, you know, if you remember from Rebels, you get this nice little shot, you know, where Obi-Wan takes out Maul, and he, you know, remembers in the last moments of Maul and his dying in his arms. And I remember that episode where Maul acknowledges what Obi-Wan is tasked to do, and I remember the last words from him that really stuck with me, where he's like, he will avenge us. Because despite, I mean, like, of course that's a very dark side way of thinking, but the way I kind of interpret it is it's like, he's, you know, even Darth Maul saw, like, because he was a Jedi at the end of the day, and what Palpatine plans were, the fact that A, he wasn't a part of it from the jump, and then B, how quickly Palpatine was ready to just cast him and Dooku and Grievous out so readily, and C, the fact that, you know, he went as far as making sure there was only 2 Jedi in this entire galaxy, with Vader and him, because the Jedi, Sith, doctrination, only should be 2, a master and an apprentice, only 2. And there was like a YouTube video where Vader is like an amalgamation of Palpatine's 3 best, Sith apprentices that he had, and it was an amalgamation of like the roboticness of Grievous, the political mindset of Dooku, and like the force strength of Darth Maul, all rolled into one just like monstrous badass the galaxy has ever witnessed. So then, like, he starts remembering the time when he was apprenticed to Qui-Gon Jinn. And I admire the decision on, obviously you got to make a young Ewan McGregor lookalike for Obi Wan, because that's what people always think of when they think of a young Obi Wan. And Alec Guinness as an older Obi Wan, you had to depict those 2 particular Obi Wans. No other way. Even after in the future when Ewan McGregor passes away, like Alec Guinness, he will be the iconic look for years to come, until some point in the next 50 or so years, when they are doing, if they're still doing more Star Wars for that far along, and some other future actor takes up the mantle of Obi Wan Kenobi in another variant retelling. Until then, Ewan McGregor and Alec Guinness is the only 2 looks. And of course, they got the look for Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn. One of my personal favorite Jedi's next to Luke, well, it's just like Luke Skywalker, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Obi-Wan is my top 3 favorite Jedi's. I love Ahsoka too, but they're like my top 3 favorite Jedi's. I think Ahsoka probably be number 4. As far as like the greatest, Jedi, ever, in my opinion. And they were called away on an assignment. And I think, well, we wanted to see the Force Ghost of Liam Neeson. We only saw him at the last few minutes of the last episode of Kenobi series. We could have done something like this when, if like he was doing like a flashback like they did with Hayden Christensen. You could have done something with, of course, people already have like a bug over their butt about deep fake young looking actors who don't look the same way they did 20 years ago. I still think it's pretty dope to what they managed to do with Hayden Christensen, as he was supposed to be depicted prior to the Clone Wars. I think they did like a decent job, with what they had to work with. It's just like, I'm not too butthurt as most other people about deepfake Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, because, out of all like the deepfake looking things that we had way in the past, it's a constantly evolving tech. You're not gonna always get it super perfect. But I think, this is, it didn't break any kind of reality from me, or at least like, I'm super invested in the story that is carrying on I'm not too concerned about the way it looks. So they could have done something with Liam Neeson, and it's shown like a flashback of Ewan McGregor being trained under Qui-Gon Jinn. As a matter of fact, I think maybe Tales of the Jedi, if you're doing like, you know, 3 episodes for one character and 3 episodes for another, I think 3 episodes dedicated to Qui-Gon Jinn teaching a young Obi Wan Kenobi could be so much fun to watch. And like what kind of lessons that Obi Wan learned that we never really got the chance to see prior to episode 1, because this would be set before episode 1 right now. So they got a distress signal and was called to investigate this mining facility where everything has gone dark, and the reactor is gone dark, and this darkness is starting to, it's the fluctuating radiation is starting to affect their lightsabers, where it's slowly starting to get dimmer and dimmer. So they can't really rely on their weapons. All the while, Qui-Gon is teaching Kenobi about don't get lost in the puzzle and stay focused on the present. And I really want more, because of course you get in certain books. I gotta look up, it's gotta be like some Obi Wan, I mean like some Qui-Gon Jinn stories that I can review at some point in the future, because I love that character. Okay, yeah. Yeah, there's what is one with Qui-Gon and Obi Wan together, and then there's another with Age of the Republic Qui-Gon Jinn. So yeah, I want to like, you know, definitely do more. Like, there's, I think there's another 5-issue thing. As a matter of fact. So yeah, I want to definitely do more Star Wars comics to review. I really, really, really want to do more, but right now I just want to do like just one right now. But because this is one of the best Star Wars comics that I've read, at least one of the best. There's definitely more, but as they're going through this facility, they notice there's blood, there's people screaming, and they assume there's all these miners. And Obi-Wan come across this figure in the darkness. Of course, they're wearing some kind of night vision kind of goggles, and discovered this kind of werewolf-like creature. And it's, you know, believed this creature somehow got in this facility and started, you know, attacking all these miners. And Obi-Wan remember his training, you know, not to get lost in this darkness, you know, think and remember what he was taught by Qui-Gon. He took off his, you know, because he mentions like, my saber is failing me, my goggles are failing me. No, I am failing. And so he closes his eyes, remembers his training, breathes, and knocks out that werewolf temporarily, at least knocks him to the side. And then Qui-Gon shows back up because he went one way to investigate a spot while Obi-Wan dealt with this creature. Because, you know, there was a screaming victim on one side and this beast on the other. Qui-Gon shows up and discovers that not all the people here are miners. There's there's these jewel thieves who's trying to rob this mining corporation of these, you know, these diamonds. And that's when everything started going dark. And the people that were attacked has been these thieves, and it's only this old man who, well, I guess, the last, like, surviving thief. So they investigate further, and they discover an actual miner who, after they still try to find this wolf creature that is escaping their grasp, this miner mentions that after they gave the description of this creature, it turns out to be Roskar or Rorschach, who is a miner himself, but because of his species, who's able to like manipulate the light around him or bend light around them, they managed to help to control their bestial. Well, I say, like, when I first read this, I thought, oh, this controls his bestial kind of nature, but no. Because there's fluctuating radiation going on with everything going dark after these thieves breaking in, it wreaks havoc with his kind of like inner like biology, and causing him to go wild and start attacking. So he attacks again, takes out the last thief, and gets the last miner by the throat. But thanks to Qui-Gon, managed to, like, pin this creature against a wall and subdue him. They got to get the reactor back online. So Kenobi, with the miner, because there's other miners who are held up in like a bunker in the facility trying to protect themselves from not only the thieves, but one of their own. The broken like fuel rod thing had to be reassembled. This whole thing about the whole puzzle pieces are being put together by Kenobi, and as he's assembling, and because everything's gone dark, the electricity is out, so they can't lower this machine down to manually apply the fuel rod if they manage to get one inside. So Kenobi has to put all this together and then sends this rod to the machine above, and the miner's about to get everything powered up with little power they have left, or at least reserve power maybe, because it's never really specified. Like, it's like if you run out of power, like how you manage to get the machine on to turn on the reactor. But he warning Kenobi, like, okay, yeah, get out of there, because once the thing turns on, it's gonna be very dangerous. And but unfortunately, like, once went on faster than expected, and Kenobi didn't have any time to like really make a move, and it shines so brightly in a blinding Kenobi, but temporarily. Don't know why he didn't get also affected with possible radiation, given the fact that it was like a kind of like a fuel rod thing, but whatever. The miners are all fine, including Rorschach, who's came to his senses, and he's feeling bad that, the death that he caused, even though there are thieves, that, he still feels bad. But the day was saved necessarily. But there's moments like this, Kenobi really like wishes that Qui-Gon was always, at least was around longer, to, because he, like Dooku mentioned in Tales of the Jedi, it was something about Qui-Gon that he was like the Superman, Clark Kent of the Jedi, world, where it's like, it's something about the way the wisdom he has was, only matched by Yoda. Only, I argue fairly better than Yoda, because Qui-Gon, because he often butt heads with the council, as we learned in episode 1, that he did not want to just follow just dogmatic ways. and this prevent him from rising to the level of the High Council, because he's like, he doesn't believe everything, the choices that they're making, and he wants to be able to help as all that he can whenever he can. And like, I hope at some point Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau will introduce in canon the Great Jedi, which I argue Qui-Gon Jinn fits the bill as a Great Jedi. That because Jedi shouldn't deal with absolute, but both light and dark side are absolutes. But it was only emerging of like a balance between the two, because everybody has like a good side and a bad side. It's learning how to controlling the bad side and live with, like, because we all have like moments where you just want to, like, hit somebody, or you get angry at people, but you gotta like learn to like try to control that and make it work for you and use it, focus it on something positive. Doesn't mean you have to purge that part of you, because that's always going to be a part of you. And he's starts reminiscing about his time during the Clone Wars. I really like this spot because you really start to, because it really harkens to your days when you was watching Clone Wars, and like you really like, just if like the last episode, the last issue really gets you in the feels of episode 1, or at least approaching episode 1 days, this puts you in the forefront of the Clone Wars series days, where he looks upon his old battle armor, and he's just like, it's like an old war vet, because like the Jedi's were peacekeepers. And even Kenobi points out, when he's remembering back when he's like on a particular mission, how like it's almost like he was on D-Day or something like that, or Vietnam. It's like he's like watching just carnage, and it's like he mentions in a thought box, like, I really do not want to be here. It's like it's like he feels bad because he feels that way, but of course he quickly snaps out of it. But it's just like, I imagine a lot of soldiers in like really deep in the like the thick of it, of the war. You probably have like usually like at least like a handful of soldiers probably have that thought, that like, I really don't want to be here, like I want to go home, kind of thing. It's kind of like Bubba from Forrest Gump, when he's dying in Forrest's arms, when it's like why this happened, I want to go home. And it's like, I really want to do like I think I'm going to do it this year. I want to do a review on Forrest Gump. I can't remember if it was this year or next year. What's on the list do I have it for? Yeah, I think it's this year that I want to review Forrest Gump, because that always stuck in my mind. I watched Forrest Gump like at least a handful of times growing up, and that always stuck in my mind, where it's just like, because like I remember it's 2 particular war movies that I really like. That was Saving Private Ryan and Forrest Gump. And you question, because not everything is about the war part in Forrest Gump, but that when they did those Vietnam scenes, they really did their thing. And it's like, you really understood more so part than any other movie that depicts Vietnam. Well, I'm pretty sure you get the same feels if the writers did their research, that you understood like somewhat that how because those 2 were probably the more grueling wars. You already like the war that we got into after 9/11. It's probably like the 3 biggest wars that we were involved in. That was probably the more like really got to you psychologically. And like when you're watching Kenobi just going through this stuff, and then remembering it, it's like I said, like we should have, like, part of one particular episode should in Kenobi should have been him going through these kind of things, and one of us should have been like him remembering moments in Clone Wars, and like he should be going through some severe PTSD, not just his, most of his people nearly annihilated systematically, but also dealing with like the post-traumatic stress of the war of Clone Wars that lasted. Clone Wars was like 5 seasons, so you can argue it was, let's say it was 5 years of war. So like let's argue, let's say it's like been like 5 years of the Clone Wars before the Jedi purge soon after, and all that stuff probably would have come to a head because he was Jedi trained. He didn't break psychologically, but we'll soon get to a character here where the war did affect him very severely. Kind of reminds me of like if you watch Universal Soldier, the first movie, they have Dolph Lundgren as the villain. You can see that similar. I imagine I immediately thought of that particular guy when dealing with this particular character that we're going to be coming across to in a few seconds. But Obi Wan was in a debriefing about taking this again, this kind of data in this kind of outpost on a bridge, and getting there before the Separatists do. And they're going to break the teams in 2 groups, one taking care of one end and the other on the other end. Kenobi volunteers his 212th division, I think it was, and to take one side of the bridge. And you meet this dude who will eventually crack in the next issue. I forgot what his name is. McKendricks. McKendricks, who you first meet him, he's like, you think he's like one of those good soldiers, like like battle tested, but it's like he's treating this like like, almost like a game. Like, I bet you I get there before you, Kenobi. And Kenobi's like, this is not good. We gotta take this seriously, and blah blah blah. And they're coming in through the air, and bombs are shooting off and everything like that. It is very much like something like Vietnam or something like that. And again, like try to get blasted out of the sky or something. And they're landing, and you're just like in the thick of it, man. It is just like, oh my god. And then you meet this clone trooper named AR. I just gonna call him AR. They call him something else, but it's like, they give like a certain sequence numbers. You can tell he's like probably right off the assembly line or out of the academy, and he's eventually gonna be in charge of carrying the flag to signal the other forces, their Navy forces, to bomb a particular area to give them chance to their main forces to try to escape once they get the data they're looking for. And man, they really like, you're reading this particular issue, you just can't help but like, man, you're right back into the Clone Wars TV series. I mean, like, they did like a good job really capturing that moment. Each moment in this issue, you feel like you're part of a particular movie or a particular show. And Kenobi manages to get the data, but he's going back for some of the men that are still out there. It's like, I'm not leaving my guys. There's other troopers like Commander Cody. It's like, we gotta get out of here. And of course, Kenobi can't help but think about Cody, who was working under him, and the fact that Cody eventually turned on him. And I think it was Cody that eventually got unbrainwashed by Ahsoka. in her particular episode in the last season. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Cody. Yeah, it definitely was Cody. And Cody, because unlike Ahsoka, because Ahsoka managed to unbrainwash Cody, but prior to that, he was with Kenobi, and unfortunately, the last image Kenobi has of Cody is him turning on him and nearly killing him. So it was like, it's heartbreaking for a lot of these Jedi because they work so close to these clones, and of course, each clone has their own personality that they form on their own to separate them from the rest because they're people. Each one of them are still people, even though they're cloned from a particular bounty hunter, Jango Fett. They all are their own people moving forward, and they got different hairstyles, cuts, bruises, tattoos, body shape, mannerisms. They're all their own individual people, and of course, the Empire eventually nipped all that in the bud because they want, soldiers and it's got no names, they're just numbers. It makes it easier for them to, like, they're kind of just the way the Nazis did. It's like it makes it easier for them to, like, treat people the way they, just like anything, because if you see them as like less than people, then you can do whatever without any worry of consciousness affecting you. And that's, really like leaning in how like horrific during this period was. So McKendrick saves Kenobi. He comes in, he's like, thinking like he was dead at first, but he comes in and saves Kenobi in a nick of time. But then as they all again, airlifted out, Kenobi just sits down for a moment to watch the sunrise, and he thinks to himself, like, because it's very like harkens to what's going on currently for Kenobi on Tatooine. Is like, every once in a while he like to watch the sunrise just to remind himself that eventually the light will come out of this darkness. And even now, metaphorically, during this period of galactic rule, it's covering the galaxy in darkness right now, but eventually light or hope will come. So I mean, I love this. This is probably my favorite part of this entire issue run right now. It is really, really good. But then the next issues where, like, a little bit later into the Clone Wars, Kenobi and Anakin were called away, even though they were in their respective missions. They had to be called away from their own personal troops that were in the fields of battle or about to go in a heat of battle, that they really want to be there for them, but they're being called away on a particular mission that they could not be spoke to over comms about McKendrick's, who has gone AWOL and went nuts and hurt a lot of innocent people, including his own, like, troopers that didn't follow his follow him in his descent into madness. Because he's, the war is like, if you know anybody who's been involved in war and like, or if you've gone through yourself, you probably understand guys like Hendrix who have, like, okay, he's gone through so much battle that, mentally it wears on him to the point of gone through severe trauma, to the point where he's just like held up in, ironically, an old Sith temple. And each Jedi had their own, or at least each general, I should say, had their own lieutenant under them. And he eventually, ends up killing his own, like, lieutenant, and turning his, I think it's like his spine into like a sword or something. Pretty sure it was a spine. I was like, dude, it's like horrific, and like how far he really fell. And I like this particular panel where like they are being told that they got to find him and just take him out, because it's not going to look good as far as war, with like, you know, how the optics it will look, not only towards the separatists, thinking like, you know, the hopes of them surrendering will probably be a little harder if they thinking they got people under the Republic side acting this way, where they're just so bloodthirsty. They'll just only embolden them to fight harder because they think they all act like this. But then all the optics look on their own people, where it's like, you know, we can't have people like this, you know, breaking morale. So that's why he had to deal with this in person. And Anakin's like, we're not assassins, you know. There's always hope for people, and like we can bring them out of the, you know, darkness. It's just like, man, it just breaks your heart even more when you hear Anakin talks like this, but know how he's hit all his aspirations and idealism is perverted by Palpatine to, because he wants to bring order to the galaxy. And this is, you know, optimistic view, but is only perverted by the shadow of Vader, to where now he's like forcing that order onto people. So they follow the trail to the swamp, and Obi Wan asking this guy about, you know, about like light and sunrise, you know, something very poetic. What was it? Like, I want to not butcher this. When the light falls on the going peaks, the sunrise needs three parts to exist: the light of a star, the sky of a world, and the life to observe it. Essentially, you know, the way I interpret it is, you know, Madras kind of lost the light at the end of the darkness, and he needs to find his way back because he lost himself. And of course, he tries to attack Kenobi, but Anakin, even though for some reason, it's like, not for some reason, those who follow Mahendrix, they took their sabers before they entered the temple, and Anakin managed to force pull the saber, one of his sabers, to him, so he can stab and kill Mahendrix. You know, he's sorry, but, you know, everyone understands you know, it's not your fault. You had to do what you had to do. But Mahendrix, you know, realizes, you know, like, you know, what he did was wrong. But part of me feels like when I'm reading this, it's like he knew very well, he should have known very well, these Jedi could easily take him down. He's only an ordinary man, so they've very easily can take him down. I argue you could have easily used your force powers to like pin him to the wall and subdue him, but I guess it was like a knee-jerk reaction, and he, you know, force pulled his saber and just instinctively just stabbed him. And Kenobi points out many times, like, these sabers were meant to defend. That's why they don't really use things like blasters. They're meant to, you know, the defend and protect. That's what, like, he always points out. The Jedi code and the sabers were meant to keep the Jedi civilized. Considering they wield such awesome powers, they followed this code to keep them civilized. and blasters are so uncivilized. But Kenobi points out, like, you know, Mahendrix found his way home, back to the light. So now he's one with the Force situation. So now it's present day again, or at least during the moments approaching to the New Hope. The sandstorm has passed at this point. Now he needs some fuel cells or power cells in order to power up his lantern, because it's going dim. So rather than going during the daytime when it's going to be scorching hot, he might as well just go out during the night and try to trade with some Jawas. And at the same time, the stormtroopers who are stationed on Tatooine are being instructed to find these Tusken Raiders who, while during the sandstorm, raided one of their caches, and they got to find their stuff. You know, like, you know, the food supplies and all this other stuff. So a squad goes on the move, and they're ambushed by the Tusken Raiders. All die except one guy who, once again, this is not clone troopers anymore. They're actual stormtroopers with different people, but they're under the same kind of dogmatic doctrination, ironically, of the Galactic Empire. And this guy has some kind of serial number, but Obi Wan calls him just Jim. This is easier. It's JM, number, but just go with Jim. So Obi Wan, despite him being like a stormtrooper, Obi Wan will not allow somebody to just be left there to die. So he gathers him up, and of course he got, you know, some batteries from fallen stormtrooper, so he has something for his lantern, and he carries him back to his homestead. He nurses him, and he wakes up. It's like almost like 3 days later, I think, and of course he, like, when he wakes up and Obi-Wan's just sitting there drinking like tea or something, it's like,
hello there.
It's like, I love it. It's one of my favorite lines. It's so, and when he says that, like, I'm so glad they because I was kind of like, oh my god, like the first line had for Obi-Wan in the Kenobi series has to be hello there. That has to be the first thing he says out his mouth. But of course he didn't. But I'm glad at the tail end, you finally meets up with young Luke. He just goes,
hello there.
And I was like, oh my god, he said the thing, he said the thing, he said the thing. I was like, you know, say what you will about Kenobi series. Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor really made that show still stand out in a positive light to me, because it is focused on those two the entire time, which it should have been the primary focus. This would have been one of the best Star Wars shows, right up there with The Mandalorian. And personally, to me, it still stands out on that same level, but I can see why other people might, you know, disagree, but I still love it. Just primarily when these two are just like acting their ass off, like they haven't missed a beat in all these years, and they're so good. It's one of my biggest hopes as an actor is being involved, again, involved into a role in Star Wars. I don't care if it's like a voice acting of a show or live action, because like I mentioned about like Pedro Pascal earlier in the videos about him talking about telling his family, like, and me like watching, you know, the original Star Wars as a kid. Like I want to be able to tell my father, like, oh my god, like I'm in a Star Wars thing. That would make my day, because like I love Star Wars that much. But Jim wakes up and he acts all cordial and everything, but he sees the saber and like he knows instinctively when he's dealing with like a Jedi, he has to take him out quickly. So of course he reaches for it, turns it on, even though the Mandalorian kind of established that because if you're not like a Jedi using like without a Force ability, the saber can be kind of over a period. It gets kind of heavy for you the more you try to wield it, or the longer you try to use it. Like as soon as you turn it on, within like a minute or two, it'll start to get kind of heavy, and nobody can just randomly wield it. You have to be really strong with the Force to do so. Of course, we've seen other non-Jedi wield a saber to attack somebody, and they'll wield it, without being cumbersome. So I guess it's just the dark saber. But Jim doesn't actually, because Obi Wan is not phased, and it's like you could take it if you want. I mean, like the desert is kind of harsh, and you need the proper tools in order to survive out here. Jim, refused to attack, even though it probably would have been pointless because he can easily get bested by Obi Wan despite his age. So he turns it off, drops it, and runs away. So when he goes back to his commander and like he gets berated for not getting his supplies back, which kind of reminds me of like the episode with Crosshairs and Bad Batch in season 2, where it's like all these stormtroopers, especially clone troopers, are completely useless. They're just tools to the Empire, and that is it. And the fact that you don't care about their well-being at all, it's just like really like just like a messed up how messed up the Galactic Republic was, or Galactic Imperialists are. So he doesn't reveal the fact that he seemed like a Jedi or anything like that, because I guess in a way you see, you say he has some kind of semblance of still a soul left, and like you can see him probably, if the story would have continued on with this particular trooper, you can say that he would have gone in the same way as Finn did and other stormtroopers who decide to defect from the Empire when they realized what they did is horrific. Or you can say like, okay, he saved my life, so I'm gonna make it even by not revealing his whereabouts and the fact that I saw him. So I consider this us even kind of situation. Those are two ways you can look at it. So Obi-Wan just looks on towards the horizon, seeing like a 20-something, young 20-something Luke Skywalker looking upon those two suns. It's like, I only think about like him, John Williams score, blasting in my mind right now as he's looking upon those two suns, and I'm hearing Mark Hamill saying like, someday I'm gonna get off this rock. And it's like, and the last panels is just like, Obi-Wan's cloak just falling to the ground, and it's like, realizing that there's like a hope coming. Like, my time has passed, and the next generation is gonna like carry that torch, and realizing that it's like, like, because like I said, I mentioned about similar therapy as they went over Luke Skywalker. It wasn't because they point out like Luke wasn't meant to take down Snoke or Ben. That was Rey's journey. Luke's journey, he was one who was responsible to take down the Emperor and bring Vader back to the light. That was his task. Obi-Wan realizes like stopping Vader is not my task. My task is set. I have to make sure this boy is ready, and once I do that, my job is done. And it's just like he has faith that this boy will of course, you remember in A New Hope where he's like telling Luke that he will probably have to be the one, him and not New Hope, but both I think like the Empire Strikes Back, where because Yoda and Obi Wan still are set in their ways in that old dogmatic. Even though they acknowledge their mistakes, they feel like there's no hope for Anakin at this point, especially after 20 years of just probably slaughter and other horrific things Vader has done during that course since episode 3 to this point. Because they still doesn't know the fact that how he slaughtered those Tusken Raiders that held his mother captive. That was just his first taste of Vader and the dark side. And there was a moment in like the episode when they tracking down Hendrix, where Obi-Wan wished that Anakin, this war didn't happen, and Anakin didn't have to worry about taking a life, just like he didn't in his folly of his youth. He hoped he'd never have to take a life too. But then he, like, realizing that, well, there was nothing stopping either one, especially with Anakin, and getting the fact of how many lives he'll soon take in the future. So yeah, so he's at peace with what will be coming next. So it's just like, man, it's like a really, I highly recommend checking out Obi Wan. Written by the Marvel ones, not Dark Horse. But yeah, well, I really want to read this last thing here. Yeah, this like, because the Force is my guide, I never will, like, pretty much like I'll never be alone, because the Force is my guide, I never will be. None of us are alone, even in our darkest hour. And that's the point with, like, Vader coming back to the light, because he felt like he was alone. He felt like he was abandoned. Nobody was like, because the way like the higher council was treating Ahsoka and Vader, or Anakin, because you remember that trial that Ahsoka was on, how quickly they turned their backs on Ahsoka, except for Anakin, and some extent, well, not some extent, well, definitely like Obi-Wan, he definitely doesn't believe Ahsoka committing kind of war crimes, but everybody was so quick to turn their back on Ahsoka, and that's why she walked away from the Order. And Anakin, just like, he feels like, like, that's why he wanted, like, Luke to join him, wanted Padme to join him so he can rule the galaxy, or at least because he lost his mother. He was growing up as a slave and and eventually, not orphan, but he was taken away from his mother, and he felt bad he wasn't there for his mother. And of course, Palpatine manipulated all that stuff. It just, his attachments, the Jedi thing was like a weakness, but it's like, it's not a weakness. And of course, Yoda and Obi-Wan, as I want to bring back up because I didn't finish this thought, they want Luke to, like, you gotta have to kill this guy because there's no hope for him. At least their eyes, there's no hope for them, for Anakin at this point. Your father's long gone. He's Vader now. You got to accept that. And of course, Luke doesn't accept that because he is not going to abandon his father the same way his father felt like so many had abandoned him and left him alone. And we all can, like, really understand Anakin's point of view. We all have felt that moment of, like, feeling like we're alone in this universe, and we're not. And we always have people by your side to, get you out of that darkness, so you don't end up turning into somebody like a Vader. But anyway, that was Obi-Wan. God, it is like really, really good. Highly recommend you guys checking this out. Happy May the 4th. There will be more Star Wars coming down in the future. Matter of fact, I want to make a point to the next Star Wars comic that I want to cover will be a Qui-Gon Jinn one. But I need to like make sure that I also put it on a list for like Luke Skywalker. And I imagine it's gotta be, if they don't have it already, they're eventually gonna be covering like a Ahsoka comic, given the fact that a TV show is gonna be coming out pretty soon. And Rosario Dawson, oh my god, I got such a crush on her. She's an amazing actress. I love her. Like, I think the first time I saw Rosario Dawson in anything was in Clerks 3, no, Clerks 2. And she was so funny, and I've had like a crush on her ever since. Even though I knew she was like she's like a Star Trek nerd, but the fact that she, is having this big time role in like a Star Wars series, I think that's kind of hilarious and ironic. I feel bad for Star Trek fans because, like, man, you say what you will about Star Wars, they're still on a high, and Star Trek is just muttering through. Nothing is in like a bottom of the barrel right now. It's just you're on your fumes, so you're still sputtering through. But man, you're desperately trying to find like your Mandalorian and your next Ahsoka. You're trying, but it's like, ooh, you're having like a tough time right now. I'll tell you what. But anyway, let me know in the comments below if you read Obi Wan. Tell me what you thought, because honestly, man, this is what I think a lot of fans would have wanted the TV show should have been. I like what we have personally, but you gotta take out the whole. Leia couldn't have been like the sole focus, or at least just one episode or two, or at least an episode and a half dealing with her. But the primary focus should have been Obi Wan Kenobi. It was his show. You got him like, palling around with a kid, and of course, yeah, you gotta appeal to children in a way, because it's your primary audience, or at least young kids. But it's like, yeah, Andor for the adults, but Kenobi should have been for everybody. And primarily people who grew up watching Clone Wars and like the prequel trilogy, and those who are expecting him to grow into the Alec Guinness version, who grew up watching the original trilogy. That should have been the primary focus of the audience. If you want to focus on a particular audience, if you want to like, there's there's little kid shows, there's young adult shows, there's grown-up shows, that kind of thing. But Kenobi should have been for young kids up to like 30 to 40-year-olds who grew up watching the Clone Wars series and the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, because the primary peak, I don't want to say peak Obi-Wan, but primarily like Obi-Wan was a huge component through all that time, along with Anakin. But anyway, oh, I do not want to forget, like, I love, say what you will about Kenobi, I love that line of dialogue with the last line between Kenobi and Vader, where like Kenobi just want to take the moment just to apologize to Anakin and saying he's sorry for everything, his part of how he turned out. And because it's still Anakin inside that eventually Luke will pull out to the surface down the line, Anakin just says, like, through that mix of I'll say Mufasa, but James Earl Jones and Hayden Christensen voice. I like that part. It was a great decision just to have that go back and forth between the dialogue, the vocal cadence. Anakin just says, like, I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did. And it's like, it's almost like, the way I interpreted it is just like, still Annie in there, where it's like, trying to like seeing like the pain in Kenobi's eyes, and like part of him is, I see it in both ways. It's like he's not only trying to like take that pain and burden off of Obi-Wan's shoulders because he's seen the horrific guilt weighing on him, but he's still Vader too at this point. So he still has to twist that knife along with that. Instead of like a nice little bow, it's like a knife twist at the end. Where it's like, I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan. So don't burden yourself on that. I chose Vader. So it's like, you know, it's like a combination of relieving his guilt and at the same time still twisting that knife because he still wants to get at Obi-Wan because he still hates Obi-Wan at the end of the day. At least at this point in his life. And that's how I interpret it, and that's why I, you know, cannot in my heart of hearts say Kenobi was an awful show. It is not. It's got so much good quality in there. That's why like I think people will be a lot more keener on if the like Kenobi and Anakin was the primary focus, and everybody just kind of just shoved to the side as like just support or just cameos or whatever. And Kenobi going through his PTSD and Vader in his way trying to, you know, dealing with his issues with Obi-Wan at the same time. And they come together and they realizing each other's pain, only they come out on the other side in different ways. But anyway, I will see you guys later on as I'm going through some more Jedi Survivor. Follow me on twitch.tv/talkative_Carl. I'll see you all soon. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you thought if you read this comic. If you haven't, definitely check it out. It's worth a read. The comics, when I read comics, I go on read comics online, and that's how I read what's current comics going on to be up to date, because I just can't be affording buying comics willy-nilly. But anyway, I'll see y'all soon. Don't forget to leave a like, share this with your friends, and take care, and may the Force be with you.